Our next part, the pin, can be done as a revolve. That if we drew the circles and extruded out some distance, then opened up a new sketch on the end face and made a little bit bigger circle and extruded it out some distance, we would have three separate features. Could possibly draw the first sketch on the front plane or the top plane and extrude it the 12 millimeters in two directions, a little more complicated than what I want to do right now, and then have the last little segment. But I want to introduce the revolve. And so revolve, basically, if we were to cut this in half and cut it in half again, this quarter section, we were pretty much looking at this profile around the side of the part. And then this pin, the short one, pin 1, those are 4-pin-1, 4-pin short 1. Interesting naming. Maybe we'll go 14 millimeter and 12 millimeter or something. I'm not. Or 17 millimeter for the height, with that being the difference. All right, so we'll move those out of the way. My new sketch then, or new part, I'm going to open up a sketch on the front plane. It is not required, but I like to just make it a habit to create a center line. And this center line is going to be infinite length and vertical. And I'm looking for it to be coincident with the origin. And so as I move close to the origin, I'm going to get that little snap, and I can see the yellow box that says it's going to be coincident. And if I want to back out of that, I can hit OK, and we go to As Sketched and uncheck the infinite length. Occasionally it reverts and it gets a little weird, so most of the time I just hit Escape and go back into the line command fresh. So let's see what it does. I'm going to draw that that first segment. It comes out. I can see the horizontal, and then that's a little bit big based on the numbers that I'm seeing, but it will adjust in. Oh, and apparently it went back to for construction, so we're going to have to adjust that anyway. So continuing on with the sketch, I'm going to go ahead and zoom up on it. So I ended up with all construction lines, even though I unchecked it. Alright, so my selection set, if I go from left to right, will be everything inside of the box. And I can see all of those lines that I sketched. If I go right to left, it'll be everything crossing the box, so including the center line. So I want to take all of these center construction lines and turn them into object lines. So I'm going to toggle with construction geometry or go over to the left and uncheck for construction. Both do the same thing. Alright, so now I have my object lines. One of the rules with the revolve, if I don't include it in the sketch, is that it will ask to close that revolve. Otherwise it wants to make a thin feature, like same as it does for the extrude. So if I go ahead and close it off and I have one center line, that center line will be the axis of revolution automatically. I can have multiple center lines for the creation of the sketch, but then I'm going to pick. If I don't have any center line, then I'm going to pick the object that I want it to revolve around, which, as long as it does not produce self-intersecting geometry, this would be valid, this would be valid, and this object line would be valid. Anything else would cause this geometry to overlap, to intersect itself, and that would cause it to error. Alright, so smart dimension, we have an overall height of 12 millimeters, and because of the sketch scaling, we shouldn't see anything really drastic in the change in the sketch. And we have the lower portion 5 millimeters, and the upper portion 5 millimeters. Alright, so we can either take our diameters and divide them by 2, in which case I would pick the object, but we also have a diametral dimension. And that is going to also be a function of the center line. If I don't have a center line, then we have to divide and come up with the radius. Alright, but if I have a center line, I can pick the center line and I can pick my object, and that's going to give me the radial dimension. As long as I'm between the center line and the object, it will be radial. As soon as I go to the other side, it shifts to a diametral dimension, and now we can put in 10 millimeters. And then, since I am in that diametral dimension, when I pick my next object, it should automatically jump and go back to diametral as well. So 14 millimeters for the diameter. And the choice is looking into my magic crystal ball of design intent, that remaining blue line. At some point is the base or the crank follower coupler going to change size. If I think it's going to change size on any one of those parts, then I probably want to leave that boss independent. If they're always going to be the same size, so I go from 10 millimeters to 12 millimeters, it's going to go to 12 millimeters on all parts, then I would want to do something like make it collinear. Alright, so with the relations, we have, again, way too many choices. Alright, so our choices are, if I pick a point and a point. In this case, I'm going to be able to tell it that it's vertical. If I pick a point and a line, then that's going to be coincident. And if I pick the line and the line, that's going to be collinear. Alright, so all three achieve the same results, but depending on your combination that you select, you are going to have different terminology, different relation being applied to achieve that end. Alright, so I'm going to make this collinear since I have those selected, and that gives me my geometry. Alright, so let's go ahead into features, and I'm going to perform a revolve boss base. Gives me the desired geometry. Alright, so kind of the same things. If I didn't have the axis of revolution in the line, I would come back and I could pick. And let's take a quick look at what some of that other geometry would select. So if I clear the selection and I pick that, I get something that looks like that. If I try to make it here, it will do that one. So on the very outside, but the verticals, it self-intersects. I don't think it's going to like that one. And the lower one, pretty much the same as what we had. And then picking the last object line gives us the same as the center line. Alright, but the nice thing about the center line is it will default. We can also tell it to go some portion, so 180 degrees would be half. But most of the time our revolves are going to be 360 degrees. And the end conditions are up to vertex, up to surface, mid-plane. We can manipulate a little bit, but we don't have that same number of selections that we get with the Boss base extrude. So that's my pin 1, pin short 1. Alright, so I'm not quite sure, still not quite sure about the naming convention there, but we'll go with it. Pin, maybe we'll just do pin short and pin. So that generates my first geometry. That has all of the information in it that I need to also produce the second. So we're going to go back to File and Save As, and I'll go ahead and make sure I save as Copy and Open. And I'm just going to delete the short out of that and call it pin. Alright, so we go back in, we have a choice. We can edit the sketch. I can double click on the sketch and just start changing numbers, but if I edit the sketch, I'm going to see those changes in real time. So the diameter is still 10 millimeters. The outside diameter is still 14. The overall height becomes 17. the upper section is 5 and the lower section becomes 10. So that's pretty much the what's going to engage into the to the base. All right, so double check my numbers: 5, 17, and 10. 14 for the diameter, 10 for the smaller diameter. All right, so we go ahead and we accept. So I can either come up to the confirmation corner. That's probably my preference. If we right click, we have the exit sketch. And if I come over and exit sketch or I rebuild, all of those do the same thing. So I'm going to stay with the exit through or accept the sketch through the confirmation corner, and then we'll just save. All right, so that gives us our pin and creates the parts that we need to build this assembly.